for joining us for the Women's Earth and Climate Action Network special call on caring for our communities. And some of you are new to WeCan, so I wanted to just say a few words about our organization, but I don't want to take a lot of time on that because it's so crucial that we move into this deeper conversation today. And you can also go to our website, which Catherine, if you could go ahead and put our link into the chat, that would be great. Thank you, to learn more about our programs. But we're very focused on really uplifting women's leadership, because we have seen through a lot of crises, the climate crisis and many others, that around the world, the role of women's leadership could not be more important at this time. And we have lots of men in our organization as well, so I welcome everyone. But just to say that this is also something that we have studied over a decade. There's been a lot of research over many years and through frontline and Indigenous communities and matriarchal societies about how important it is to have women's leadership and women's voices heard. And at this time, I think it's even more important than ever. So I don't want to go into a lot of stats and programming around Weekend, other than to say that our 4 guiding principles are respect for the rights of Indigenous peoples, the rights of women, the rights of nature, and the rights of future generations. And we have a very intersectional lens. And we have been working with a lot of frontline communities, and we know now more than ever with this coronavirus how important it is that we work together. And that's why we have really decided to have this call today in response to a lot of our community members all across the world really reaching out saying we really want to have a conversation today. So I'm going to do some framing remarks because I want us to have a context and a platform for the speakers, and to really share a little bit of analysis about this moment. But before I do that, I do want to go ahead and welcome our speakers, because we are very, very thrilled and honored that they've taken time today. They're all working around the clock themselves, given the conditions that have happened over the last month. So we thank you for your precious time. We're first going to be hearing from Dr. Rupa Marya. She's a doctor and an associate professor of medicine at UCSF and faculty director of the Do No Harm Coalition, which is an organization of over 450 health workers committed to structural change to address health problems. She addresses health issues at the nexus of racism and state violence through her medical work and through her international outreach with her band Rupa and the April Fishes, which is an awesome band, and I've heard them play. Each of the presenters have much longer bios. Those are posted on our website, so I'm just giving you a brief overview of each of them. They're really remarkable women. And we'll be hearing from Linda Blackwell, who is Catawba Nation, and she's waving there. We see her, and we'll be hearing from her next. She is an ethnobotanist specializing in teaching about culturally important plants and their uses as food and medicine. And she works as the director of food sovereignty programs at United Tribes Technical College. And she's also part of the Miniwichoni Clinic and Farm, which is an integrative healing center at the Standing Rock Nation. And, you know, I think it's one of the most powerful things that came out of all that was sacrificed at Standing Rock. So thank you so much, Linda, for that work and taking your time with us. And then we will be hearing from Jacqueline Patterson, who's the director of the NAACP Environmental and Climate Justice Program. And since 2007, she served as the coordinator and co-founder of Women of Color United, and has worked as a researcher, program manager, coordinator, advocate, and activist working on women's rights, violence against women, health issues, racial justice, economic justice, and environmental and climate justice. And we're super honored to have her here as well today with us to share her perspective. So thank you to the presenters, and thank you to our community for having this precious time together. It's been super challenging. Just a personal note, I'm here in the San Francisco Bay Area. I think we're on lockdown day number 8. Cases are rising in California, and we're feeling it. I myself have been quite ill the last few weeks, not with COVID, but with bronchitis. So, I've had that experience of being super vulnerable knowing, that this would not be a good time for me to get the virus. And I know all of us in different ways are, at home, sheltering at home. Some of us don't have homes to shelter in at all. Some people are managing their kids and work, caring for their elders. There's a variety of things that have come up that we want to discuss today. We're going to really be approaching this from several angles, but one is the immediate crisis at hand. And I know people have questions, which is why we have these healers and doctors and great thinkers on the phone to deal with right now and questions and needs you might have. But we're also sharing the long-term view, because we know we need to address both a short-term and a long-term analysis. And in that sense, there is a cultural, political, and economic breakdown in our systems that we're looking at right now, and they have to change. And in this moment, we can see how injustices are really amplified in crises, from racism to colonization, patriarchy, our economic injustices. They are being amplified right now. And we wanted to, really acknowledge that and note that. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, people who are really suffering, who are people on the front lines who may not have homes, people who are losing their jobs at this time. We also have been working really hard to support doctors and nurses who here and in other countries around the world don't even have, the basic needs of personal protective equipment like masks and gloves, and it's just really heartbreaking here in the United States, where we can pour enormous amounts of money into infrastructure for our military, but we cannot protect our nurses and doctors on the front lines dealing with this illness. It's outrageous. So there's a real crack in the system here. And we feel it, and we know all of you care deeply about this as we do. And we know we need to also use this time to do one of the things that we know to do in emergencies, which is to come together, to create solidarity, to create communication, to support each other. And we also want to address, how we're going to jump into the narrative, because we know that at times like this, the media can be sharing misinformation. I won't even go into what our federal government is doing and our president, because that would take up 4 hours of a rant that we don't want to waste time on. But, we need other leadership, and it's coming from our communities, and it's coming from the front lines, and it's coming from all of you. I did want to mention that one of the calls to action, because there's many, and I'm sure our speakers will be presenting others, one that was just coming out since yesterday, which is the People's Bailout Campaign. And we'll put a link into the chat about that. And, one of the things that we don't want to see right now is these different programs that are coming out, where our government is showing, different types of programs that they're going to be offering in terms of economic stimulus. We've seen this in 2008. We've seen this movie before, and we don't want that repeated, where the fossil fuel industry is bailed out, who is responsible for the climate crisis, where we're seeing big pharma, where we see, a lot of the banks bailed out in these crises. And a lot of us are organizing together to push back and say, no, this time we need to bail out the people. We need to be helping the grassroots. We need to be supporting our communities. The money needs to go to the nurses and the doctors, to people who are running the grocery stores, all the people we need to be thankful for who are keeping our systems going, the farmers, the people who are homeless, people who are everyday people. This is where this money needs to be going. And so we are posting about that. It's called the People's Bailout Campaign. We're continuing our divestment work because we do not want to see this moment pass us by. This is our opportunity when there's a crack in the system for something new to happen, something that many of us in diverse movements know are the changes that we've been working for a super long time. I saw a really powerful piece of graffiti that was shown on social media over the last few days that came out of China. and it was written in one of the subway stations, and I'll read it to you. The translation is, "We can't return to normal because the normal that we had was precisely the problem." And I think that that's a really powerful statement for all of us to look at in this time where we're being asked to stop and shelter in place. Is while we're addressing these crises, and we need to, talk today about immediate needs and people's immediate health concerns, we also cannot allow ourselves to go back to where we were. There's no going back. This is a time for, whether you want to call it the Green New Deal, permaculture changes, more Indigenous rights, women's rights, a smashing of the patriarchy, however you want to phrase it. This is our time for systemic change. And, I feel like many of us knew in our bones that this time was coming, whether it was through the climate crisis and impacts that were coming through this pandemic, that we could not continue as we were. We could not continue as we were. And so now we're here. And let's really work in solidarity about where we go from here to there. And the last thing I'm going to share, and then I'm going to hand the floor to Rupa. And Rupa, I don't know if you heard your introduction. We gave you, a good shout out. I hope you were able to hear that. I'm going to hand the floor to Rupa in a moment. The last thing I wanted to say is that scientists are looking for the origins of this particular pandemic, COVID-19. I am not a scientist, but I've been trying to follow what the scientists are telling us. And we definitely know this comes from, the animal world, and, determining exactly where that crossover happened in the human species, I think, is yet to be exactly determined. But what I do want to say is that, like the climate crisis, like this pandemic with COVID-19, the Earth could not be letting us know any more loudly that we have crossed the boundaries with nature. Our human relationship with Mother Earth, our human relationship with the water, the mountains, the other non-human species must change. And I think that this moment is causing us to deeply reflect that we have crossed our agreement with nature. And so it's also an opportunity for us to step back and say, one more time, how are we going to reframe our relationship with the natural systems? How are we going to respect the natural laws of Mother Earth? How do we live within the carrying capacity of the natural world? How do we change our economic structures? How do we change our injustices and racism and capitalism so that we see Mother Earth, we see the natural laws as the natural order that we need to respect? And again, this is where our Indigenous allies and Indigenous leadership is so essential. And for those living in harmony with Mother Earth, who have so much knowledge to share with us, with their traditional ecological knowledge, and with caring for the earth and living with the earth in a good way. So throughout this call, we're going to be having comments in the chat, offering up different places to donate to with people on the front lines, working in communities and emergency situations. We encourage our presenters to please share information that they have that they would like to give a shout out to or get supported. And with that, I so much thank you, Rupa, for joining us, and I'd like to hand the floor to you now, Rupa. Thank you. And Catherine, you might need to unmute Rupa since we've muted everyone. There we go.
Hey there, everybody. My name is Rupa Marya. I am a physician at UC San Francisco, and I'm in the Division of Hospital Medicine, where I work as an associate professor of medicine. I teach internal medicine, and I see patients in the hospital. I've been active in the last 4 weeks on service in the hospital as we've been ruling out COVID patients coming in, people with this illness, and also seeing many healthcare workers now testing positive at UCSF. We have 10 healthcare workers who are positive, and the administration is telling us that none of them got the virus at work, which to me is really hard to believe. It's been an extremely stressful time. This week alone, I have received at least 7 different phone calls from different doctors, all of them women, crying that they don't have the protective equipment we need. So people are being told not to go into rooms with masks. People are being told not to have, oh, hi, Tasha, what kind of masks they need. They're being told if they wear masks, the nurses will feel like they need masks, and you can't possibly have the nurses then wanting masks. So it's this kind of really bizarre reality we're in right now, where health workers are going to get sick with this current way of doing things. What's been interesting to me is to note that most of the leadership of our hospital is men, and most of the people who are crying are women, and they're demanding that all people should have access to these masks. I actually just wrote a letter this morning requesting from workers around the whole country to refuse to go back to work until the president commits to using the Defense Production Act, which would allow us to rapidly ramp up the production of masks and test kits and ventilators and other protective equipment that we need on the front line. It is unreal that we've spent 2 months fretting over our economy and very little time ramping up the availability of our masks and our ventilators. And so California is expected, we are expected here, I'm in the Bay Area, to hit our peak in about 2 weeks, and we won't have any masks by the time that time hits. It should not be on governors to, be begging Apple and Elon Musk to personally fly a jet over to China and to go get masks. This is ridiculous. And so to me, this situation exposes the fracture lines that have been put in place through colonialism and even within our own healthcare system. The fact that it is so many women who are standing in solidarity with their nursing partners, the doctors and nurses, and just the gender and race dynamics in our own work, where the security guards are being told not to wear masks. Almost all of them are brown and black, and they're being told by mostly white leadership that they shouldn't be wearing masks. And so that is my biggest alarm right now that I'd like to sound, is that if you do need medical care, God forbid, you're going to want someone to be there for you. And there are now talks of people walking off the job if they don't feel safe. So you're going to want your health workers there, and you're going to want your health workers not to be infecting you. So if there is, if you're showing up and you actually don't have the disease, you don't want to be getting it from us. So we should be wearing protective gear of all sorts in this operation. And it's shocking and alarming to me that we can spend $1 trillion a day to keep our economy afloat, and we can't mobilize for the people. That being said, too, I think that this is a very important time to push an agenda for Medicare for all right now, emergently, so that no one gets surprised with hospital bills. And sorry if I'm speaking specifically from the US experience. I understand in different countries, you guys have different healthcare situations, but here in the United States, we have Trump and Biden, who both love the idea of private healthcare insurance. Unfortunately, we are not going to be able to address the healthcare needs of the millions of people who are losing their jobs right now, and consequently losing their health insurance in 6 months from now. So that's when we're going to see the unbelievable and tragic consequences of unnecessary tragedies, of people just not being able to afford their insulin or other life-saving medicine because they lost their health insurance. So this moment, this problem, is truly a crucial opportunity to push for those changes that we've all known we've needed for a long time, but now we can just see that reality is making that case for us. In terms of keeping safe, I hope everyone is keeping safe. I hope you're elders, especially I see on here, are being as sequestered as possible. We do see that social distancing works. We see that in countries where they have a lot more discipline, especially the Asian countries around that the social distancing really does work. Even looking at the rates of infection or transmission or testing, I should say positive tests here in California compared to other places, the Bay Area was the first area to go on shelter in place, shelter at home. And our rates are not increasing as quickly, even though we're pretty dense compared to Los Angeles or other places around our own state, but especially not as rapidly compared to New York. New York, of course, has better access to testing than we do right now, so they're testing more people. So I think that the shelter in place idea is a great idea. Ideally, elders don't even have to go out to go shopping. Someone could come and deliver their shopping for them. And then when you do go shopping, at least I do, I mask up and I wear gloves. And I just, when I come home, I take off my clothes and take a shower. I do that because I am humbled by the intensity of this virus. Let me see here. I have heard that if we keep our immune systems robust, that we should more effectively ward this off. So yes, I think keeping your immune system robust is a really, really good idea, always. And so I put on Medium, I've been posting essays on Medium. You can follow me there. My name is Rupa Marya, but I put like a list of things that you can do for yourself. Lots of folks who have knowledge about traditional indigenous knowledge about their medicine ways that they have, things that help them through viral cold seasons, and they're great suggestions, and they're things that actually do help. So I think plant medicines are great right now. Getting sleep is really good. There was some data to suggest that melatonin, a small dose of melatonin every night, might help calm down what's called the inflammasome, which is this combination of things in your blood that get set off by this virus that cause this overwhelming inflammation in the lungs. So personally, I've been taking 5 milligrams of melatonin to sleep at night. It helps me sleep. And then, anything that can help you calm stress and relax and keep your body healthy through herbs and medicine or foods is really, really great. So you can check out that essay. Someone posted it here. Thank you. Melatonin comes from sunshine. Vitamin D comes from sunshine. Melatonin comes from your pineal gland in your brain, and it is the way that it circulates in our body. It is timed with what's called the circadian clock, the rhythm of nighttime and daytime. Excess melatonin that we get from the store is synthetically derived, and it acts in the same way on our bodies. It does the same things. Yes.
Rupa, I just want to say, why don't you go ahead and, maybe just make some more of your comments, and we'll hear from all the presenters, and we'll come back to a bunch of questions, because I'm sure the questions are going to keep going.
No, that's it.
Yeah. No. I just wanted to see if you wanted to, we'll come back to questions. I just want to let the other presenters talk a little bit, and then we'll come back to a lot of questions, because I know there will be more. But I know one thing people really wanted to know, and maybe you could comment on that and then making a closing comment for this moment is, is there any way people could help with this letter that you put out? Because we all want to support you. So is there a way we can help with the letter?
Yeah, just circulate it, sign it and circulate it. Make a commitment not to go back to work until the Defense Production Act is is activated, and we start manufacturing our own masks, test kits, and ventilators here in the United States.
Great. And where can people get a hold of that letter?
It's on my Medium profile. It's called, I think it's called Help Health Workers by Refusing to Go to Work.
Super. Okay, well, we'll make sure to do that, and we'll come back to you in a moment. Thank you so much for being with us. Yes. And we're going to hand the floor over to Linda Black Elk. Thank you, Linda.
Hi, everybody. I'm so honored to be on here today, visiting with you guys a little bit. I am an ethnobotanist, as Asprey said earlier, and I have been working a lot on being proactive in boosting my own immune system and the immune systems of the people that I love, people around me. Been posting a lot about it. It's something that I do actively in my daily life. I work as a traditional healer, and I'm also very active in the food sovereignty movement and in plant medicine in general. I can't stress enough the link between socioeconomics and the number of people who are going to be affected by SARS-CoV-2 or COVID-19 infection. I feel like that's a really important link to make. People who do not have access to healthcare, but also people who do not have access to healthy foods in order to keep their immune systems up. I've been trying to come up with recipes and things like that for things that are very inexpensive, ways to keep our gut microbiome healthy. Cabbage is very inexpensive, and you can make sauerkraut, which is a wonderful fermented product, just using cabbage and salt. And so that's just one way to keep our gut microbiome healthy. If you have the funds to purchase things like garlic and onions and hot chilies, you can add them to the sauerkraut and basically make kimchi as well, which is also really wonderful, a wonderful way to boost your immune system. But I'm really turning to a lot of traditional foods of the Great Plains. This is where I grew up for a long time. And so I've been turning to a lot of traditional foods and encouraging my friends to do the same. I'm using a lot of elderberry elixir. I'm using a lot of raw honey, olive leaf tincture sent by my sister out in California, and a lot of other antivirals that I'm using. And I'm happy to talk about all of that. But the fact is, not everyone has access to elderberry elixir and olive leaf tincture. So it's really important to keep our immune systems high, you know, by whatever means necessary, by whatever we have available. Luckily, spring is upon us. And so a lot of us will start having access to free food growing right outside of our doors. And so I really encourage people to attempt foraging, make sure that you understand plant identification really well. And if you have questions about that, there are tons of unbelievably knowledgeable people around who can help you identify a dandelion, for example, if you don't know how to do that, or chickweed. That's another really wonderful spring edible. Yeah, I guess that's sort of my intro and sort of what I'm looking at. Like I said, I think it's important to understand the link between food and food access and a COVID-19 infection, between, you know, socioeconomics in general and a COVID-19 infection, access to healthcare. I suppose one other thing that I could say is I teach at a tribal university in Bismarck, North Dakota, and I cannot afford health insurance for my family. I did everything they told me to do. I'm sorry, I might get a little emotional here. I did everything they told me to do when I was growing up. I got an education, I've behaved, I have made sure that I've lived a life, you know, I've tried to stay out of the legal system as much as possible, although I have been a part of a lot of protests and things like that. I did everything they told me to do, and I can't afford health insurance for my family. So I think it's just something that we all need to consider, that even the people among us who have worked, you know, pulled themselves up by the bootstraps, as a lot of them are trying to say. It's bullshit, excuse my language, but it is, because a lot of those of us who've done exactly what they told us to do still can't afford that. And I'm very scared for my people. I'm really scared for for Indigenous people in general in the United States, and what's going to happen to us because of that and our lack of access to really good healthcare. And so that's all I have to say for now.
Well, thank you so much, Linda. And you know, your tears are welcome, and it makes me cry hearing you. And you know, I know so many of us are in that situation, and it's part of, you know, thank you for your knowledge, thank you for your wisdom, and we'll come back. People have questions for you, but I just, you know, want you to know that we're here for you. That's why we're having this call. We're here for each other, and you know, that's what this moment is. We can't go back. We have to get, you know, health coverage for everyone in this country. And these systems of oppression that we are living in must come to an end. The sacrifice that is happening, and the just the death that is coming, the chaos that is coming demands that this transformation happen. We must find a way through this, that we come out different on the other side. So thank you for your good words and your tears and your wisdom. And let's go ahead and move to Jackie Patterson. Thank you, Jackie, for joining us.
Thank you. It's an honor to be with you all, and an honor to follow the previous speakers. I feel like I'm taking a deep breath and before starting with my part. I'm with the NAACP's Environmental and Climate Justice Program, and our work in this moment has been around looking at all of the civil rights implications of COVID-19. So we put out a document, which I'll put the link in the chat here. It's 10 equity considerations of COVID-19. And I basically wrote, I was on vacation when this whole thing kind of came about, and I felt so kind of far away and felt like I wanted to start to get us as an organization to focus on the many intersections with our civil rights work. And so I kind of wrote it in like a 17-hour marathon, and since then we've built on it. But we've talked about all the different ways that this pandemic really it's rooted in the same, and the impacts on certain communities and populations more than others is rooted in the same kind of root cause, whether it's capitalism, white supremacy, all of these different dynamics that have led us to where we are, and how our systems were not prepared for this because of the systems being built on this notion of building wealth and power in the hands of just a few. And then we see how all of this systemic inequities have resulted in the same populations that are disproportionately and differentially vulnerable to disasters and to climate change, the same populations that are being disproportionately impacted here. So in the document, we talk about first and foremost racism, and how racism is contributing, is one of the manifestations of the situation, whether it's the anti-Asian issues that are coming about, and of course, Trump just stopped using the term Chinese virus, to even stigmatization in terms of, there's a whole religious fundamentalism group that's attributing the COVID-19 to the LGBTQ population, which was something that I found out when I was doing the research on for this paper. And then we looked at all the different populations that are disproportionately impacted, including people who are incarcerated, people who are immigrants, and particularly undocumented immigrant population, and all the folks that we've heard so much in the news. Certainly the indigenous communities, given the lack of resources that are given to Indian health services, people with disabilities, and people experiencing homelessness, and of course low-income communities. And then, of course, we talk about the gendered impacts as it relates to the spike in violence against women that happens with every single disaster. And we're already starting to hear it happening here, as well as the spikes in child abuse that happens that's connected with these types of disasters. We also, of course, talk about the impacts on frontline workers that we've talked about so much in the news. And then the impact on democracy vehicles, whether it's the elections and the primaries, or even the census. And we know that the having the census right is tied to everything from districting in terms of our democracy to how funding is allocated for communities. And so we also, talk, of course, about the toxic cleaning supplies that are being advanced because of course, the strong lobby of the chemical industry, the school impacts, the differential impact to, access to health and testing kits and so forth. And also the ways that it's being used to justify restrictive immigration policies. And finally, we're talking about how the different disinformation that's coming out of the White House and so forth are fueling what's going on. And so we have a whole kind of laundry list of of measures that we think need to be taken. Some of the overarching ones are universal access to broadband, because we need to continue to have democratic systems, and everyone needs to have access to information, as well as being able to have portals to be able to give their input in the process. And some folks don't have that access now, and it's really our only channels now, not to mention kids needing to have education through those channels as well. As was stated before, the universal access to healthcare is critical during this time. We also talk about needing to really, instead of kind of each and every time some of these things happen, how to make things better for people of color, how to make things better for poor people. We need to look at the systemic roots and actually eliminate racism and xenophobia. We need to eliminate poverty and so forth. So these are some of the things that we're talking about in terms of addressing root causes on the long term, as well as addressing these issues on the short term. So that's just a bit of an overview. I don't want to, I know we want to get to some Q&A and back and forth. So there's so much more that you'll see in the document once you get to look at it, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of an overview. So thank you all.
Thank you so much, Jackie. And I've had a look at the document, and it's really quite comprehensive and powerful. So thank you for that work to collect all that data in one place, because it does help us to then have a good political, systemic, cultural analysis to make sure that this moment creates the transformation that we need. And I want to get back to Rupa and Linda as well, but I wanted to ask you about you know, if there was any specific campaign or any cause that you want to highlight before we shift over to some more Q&A.
Good question. I think you've already talked about the people's bailout, right? So I think that's definitely an important one to uplift. This is a much smaller one issue-ish thing, but another sign-on that's been going around, that's being pushed, is the declaring a moratorium on utility shutoffs. So that's a huge issue, because people are getting, you know, have had their water shut off and their electricity shut off, and these are the commons that everybody should be able to have access to, and we don't want people paying the price of poverty in these times with their very lives by having these critical resources shut off. So yeah, thank you.
That's a good one. And just to remember also that Rupa, we've already put in the chat section, and we'll do a follow-up on Facebook as well, has a link to the very important letter that she mentioned, really demanding that we not have people go to work unless they have the proper protective gear, which I have to say, just every time I say it, it makes me so angry I can't hardly breathe. And just to also mention for folks around the People's Bailout campaign, just in brief, I'm just going to say what the 5 concepts are, so it's not so vague. 1 is health is the top priority for all people with no exceptions. 2, provide economic relief directly to the people. 3, rescue workers and communities, not corporate executives. That's what I was talking about earlier. We don't want those bailouts where all the executives and the corporations get bailed out and the banks, but not the people. 4, create resilience for future crises. And 5, build solidarity and community across borders. Do not empower authoritarians. So those are the principles that are being worked with. And so just wanted to mention that. And that's also in the chat section. So I want to loop back around, and I know people have questions. Go ahead and post them in the chat. And maybe we could start off again with Rupa, and then Linda and Jackie, and, you know, just kind of have a free flowing back and forth conversation as questions come up. You know, one thing I wanted to know from you, Rupa, because I'm getting some questions here on my text as well, is, you know, of course, people want to know just some of the basics of, like, you know, how do you get through the day? What are some best practices, just on a practical note? And then when you're done, Rupa, maybe with some of that, people want to know, Linda, from you, because you're working with food sovereignty, a little bit more about, like, you know, how you know, how do you get started? Just some things, because people are afraid about not just the next 3 months, but, you know, like their food system. So Rupa, let's jump to you and just go as you please. I'm just kind of getting things going. Thank you. Rupa, you're on mute.
Yeah, here we go.
Talk-
So it's been really challenging the last few weeks. What helps me is to have a really good decontamination protocol when I come home. So I know that I'm taking care of my family as well. I have 2 little ones and a husband, and I don't want to see them getting sick. And so for me, that means, you know, when I come back home, I just strip down to my birthday suit, throw the clothes in the washer right away, jump into the shower. I usually wear my hair up at work. I am not wearing my contact lenses at all, just because it's easier for viruses to, you know, especially droplets, to get in the eyes and stay there. And it's been, you know, just very stressful. I've never been in such a stressful situation where I'm worried for my safety as well as other people's safety. That's never been a consideration I've had as a physician. And it makes me think a little bit of our time at Standing Rock together, Linda, because it's, you know, that kind of situation where we don't have enough of everything that we might need, and we have to improvise and get creative, and also realize that, you know, no one from above is going to come save us. And that we have to really take care of ourselves. So, and that way it is breeding a lot of autonomy, and that is good. But there's also the injustice that, you know, we have systems in place where if we are bailing out an economy, we can bail out the people and the providers who are taking care of the people right now. And so I think that what's happening right now is people are seeing kind of like the power structure laid bare in front of our eyes, that, you know, our president is saying people should go back to work because they want, you know, the economy not to suffer. But if people actually went back to work right now, we would see a lot of death. And that is something that we're working hard to prevent right now.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rupa. Linda, do you want to jump in with some help here on food sovereignty and caring for ourselves at home? Thanks.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to say, and I think Rupa would agree with me on this, that Western medicine is doing their best to treat COVID-19 as much as possible, but there really isn't a solid, I mean, there's no cure, absolutely, there's no vaccine, and you know, people are trying all sorts of different treatments right now. There's not one solid thing that people are trying. People are being put on ventilators and being made as comfortable and given as much breathing support as possible. But there really isn't a solid treatment out there. And I would say, so I have issues with using words like prevent, cure, when it comes to COVID-19. What we can do, luckily, we have our traditional medicines, and it doesn't matter where you are from in the world, you have traditional medicines that you can turn to that have very general actions. You have medicines you can turn to that will boost your immune system, that will provide lung support, that will provide a good, you know, gut flora, gut microbiome, so that you can fight off viral illnesses more effectively. So I want to make sure to say that what we really have to hold on to are our traditional medicines and our traditional foods. So now I believe is the time, if you do not know how to forage or garden, grow your own food yet, now is the time to learn to do that. It is vital. And this is what's going to help us be more stable in the future, growing our own food and learning how to harvest our own foods and medicines, even on into the future when COVID-19 has you know, that all the illnesses have stabilized. Learn to hunt, learn to fish, growing your own food. There's tons of resources. I fully believe you can feed a family of 4 on 1 acre. There's tons of resources on learning how to do that, and on turning your yard, if you have one, into a garden, into a resource of growing amazing food. And there's tons of resources out there to learn to do that. Foraging, I think right now is really vital. It's free food, and you can learn what's available in your area. Everything from dandelions, as I said earlier, chickweed, plantain, also known as plantago, not the green banana looking thing, although that grows wild in some places of the world as well. Learn what's in your area and learn to harvest them sustainably. One of the first steps, one of the very first things that you can do is figure out 3 plants that grow wild and free in your area. Learn how to identify them properly and go out and start harvesting them. One other thing that I want to stress: food is medicine. And so let's say you're out there harvesting dandelions for free. Not only are you consuming the calories from the dandelions, but they are actually amazing at regulating blood sugar. Dandelion root has a lot of really amazing complex carbohydrates. The phytonutrients in dandelion leaves are amazing. And so, you know, when you are harvesting these wild foods for free, you're also, along with getting caloric input, you are getting a lot of medicine as well. You're also getting out into the sunshine and, you know, getting vitamin D, you're getting exercise, you're breathing fresh air. And those things are really important as well. So, and plus being outside and harvesting, being in touch with our Mother Earth is really important for your spirit. So these wild foods, these wild medicines, they don't just feed us physically, they feed us emotionally, mentally, and spiritually as well. And that's vital right now, because all of this fear, all of this anxiety, it is actually lowering our immune systems. Numerous studies have shown that anxiety and stress will lower your immune system. And so one great way to give you that boost and keep you feeling good is getting outside, getting in touch with our Mother Earth, getting in touch with that soil, so that we can stay healthy. Growing your own food. Start your seeds now. Now is the time to start your seeds, to get ready to plant them outside. Spring is here. It's a time of renewal, and yeah.
Great, thank you. Good words of wisdom, thank you. And I'm going to hand the floor over to Jackie in a moment to make some comments as well. I was seeing a comment in the chat that I wanted to briefly address, because maybe the person had joined a little bit later, but in my opening remarks, I mentioned something I want to come back to, which is that, you know, many of us, certainly our organization, and I know many of our colleagues are working very closely with Indigenous peoples. As an example, we have a Women for Forest program in the Democratic Republic of Congo with Pygmy women. We work up in the rainforest in Alaska to stop the Trump administration doing rollbacks to log all the old growth up in the Tongass. We also work in Brazil and Ecuador with Indigenous women who are fighting very hard to protect the Amazon rainforest. And I mention this because, one, we should be supporting Indigenous peoples in their frontline fights to protect our ecosystems and their traditional ways of life, because it's just the right thing to do. But also, you know, as we were saying earlier, this disease has come from humans using up a lot of habitat. We are coming too close into the wild. We are taking up too much habitat as humans. And in that space of that crossover is where these viruses, not just COVID-19, but others like Ebola, were in animals, and that's where they belong, in wild creatures where it's not harming them. But when it comes into the human world, it creates these really deadly diseases. So again, there's a lot of intersectional movement building we need to do here to support our Indigenous allies, lift up the Universal Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, the right to free, prior, informed consent of Indigenous peoples, who are calling out to say, do not put pipelines in our territories, do not extract in our territories, stop fossil fuel extraction in our territories, stop mining in our territories, because our territories are sacred places. They are, you know, living in a way, Indigenous people have been living in a way in harmony with these lands that is protecting these lands. There is a whole methodology and worldview about protecting these ecosystems that we must respect. So one of the things we can also do is to uplift Indigenous people's rights and their struggles to protect their territories, and to understand that they're doing it for themselves, but they're doing it for all of us, for, you know, keeping carbon sequestered in forests, keeping biodiversity strong, and also keeping that boundary with the wild that we have broken. And Mother Earth is certainly letting us know that. So again, just a shout out to, you know, a lot of the Indigenous allies we have and Indigenous groups that we really need to understand that that's part of this moment as well. And with that, I'd like to hand it back to you, Jackie, because you have so much insight into, you know, the communities you work with and what their needs are, and insights about what's happening on the ground. So Jackie, I hand it back to you. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. No, I think I just want to highlight that when this thing started to come about, there was a conversation among our team and organization about how it affects our work. And I was saying, in some ways, our work remains the same, because it's the very same things that we were doing around building resilience to climate change are the very same things that we need to be doing in this moment. I mean, Linda's point around working the land and around local food systems. If we had had local food systems in the first place, then these communities wouldn't be in such a tough position now when we're having to shelter in place. And similarly, with all of our other systems, we had decentralized energy, there wouldn't be this concern around shutoffs. So if we had better public water systems and less water privatizations, there wouldn't be the level of concern around water shutoffs. And so that same work just becomes all the more important, so that because we know that this is not going to be the only shock that we're going to have as we continue to experience climate impacts. And we really do need to live in better harmony with the earth. And we really do need to have more community controlled, community led, and localized systems. And so that's the work that we've been doing. That's the work that we look to continue. We're actually working now on a land justice training and project, so that we actually are having this conversation about what are the legal frameworks and what are the processes we need to be able to secure land, and to be able to, as we said before, to be able to work the land and return to some of those traditions that are so vital to our survival and to our thriving as communities. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jackie. And I just wanted to also let folks know that, you know, we are recording this. We are going to be posting this. So a lot of this knowledge you can come back to. I don't want people to be frantically trying to be taking notes. We will be posting this. We will be posting it on social media with the links to all the things the speakers are offering, which is such valuable knowledge. And I wanted to go back because there was a question that came up about some of the treatments that are coming out of Cuba. And apparently, you know, people are concerned, like, is it real? Is our government suppressing it? You know, could you, you know, clue us in about some of Cuba if you can? Thank you. I think you're on mute. Yeah. Oops.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, so there is an interesting treatment coming out of Cuba. I think it's an interferon 2B immunomodulating therapy, and I haven't seen the studies yet. I don't think it's anything that we would have to do clinical trials basically here before we start any therapy, but I know that is something that people are looking at. I believe it was used in China and had some success. That isn't something that anyone's trying to sequester or like keep out of, you know, our knowledge here in medicine. I think everything is open for examination right now, but that is immunomodulating therapy, such as that one, is definitely something that is being considered right now.
Great.
That being said, that being said, also, I would just want to say that there are some medicines that have shown some early, also ones that need to be studied more. Hydroxychloroquine, also known as Plaquenil, and azithromycin together were shown to shorten the duration of viral shedding, which could align. We see most viral shedding which means virus in the secretions from the nose and the throat, and also in the stool. You see most of that when people are most acutely ill. That's what we're finding, is that when people are more critical, they're shedding more virus, which is why intubation or procedures that require like putting people on ventilators or doing high flow oxygen, those are procedures that are very high risk for transmitting the virus. And so those medicines together in a small study out of France was shown to decrease viral shedding quite significantly and shorten the duration of viral shedding. But again, that didn't look at, we haven't seen any reporting on clinical outcomes. Like, does that mean people get better faster or that they're less likely to die? We don't know that yet. So I think that those will be things that will have to be studied. And the reason these have to be studied is because when someone like Trump gets on, the news and makes a statement like that, people will try these drugs and they'll die. Every drug has, like every medicine has, it has to be used responsibly. And right now we're trying to understand what that range is and what the appropriate way to treat people is. So what we're doing right now with folks is what we call supportive care. And in the United States, what that looks like is when someone's extremely sick and they can't oxygenate themselves, then we put them on supplemental oxygen, either something non-invasive like a mask or high flow oxygen, or something invasive, which would involve intubation and ventilation. One of our big challenges is that we don't have enough ventilators in the United States, or at least in different localities, to be able to ventilate as many people as we think are going to get sick. That is why we have such aggressive stay-at-home measures here in San Francisco, is not necessarily to decrease the number of people getting sick, but to decrease the rate at which they're getting sick, so that we could handle we could have a ventilator for everyone who might possibly need one.
That's great, Rupa. Thank you. There's 2 more questions for you, and then I'm going to go to some of the speakers. 2 more questions for you, Rupa. One is, people are asking about homemade masks and their effectiveness or not. That's one question. And then the other is around, people trying to wrap their minds around the fact, again, we sort of touched on this, but maybe you could speak to it regarding the ventilators. No one's seeming to understand how we have this huge country, all these factories. Why are there not making tons of ventilators and equipment for all of you? So homemade masks, and why is this equipment just not being made right now in our factories immediately?
Yes, and Osprey, after that, I'm going to have to jump off
Okay.
because I got asked to be on the CBS Evening News about this issue.
Oh, great.
And so we need, so homemade masks are great for people who are not healthcare workers. So if you want to make yourself a homemade mask to go to the grocery store, being in the grocery store, there's probably virus around. So I would, if you can, get some gloves, glove up and put a mask. That is a perfect place for a homemade mask. A homemade mask has no place in a health worker's hands. The fact that the CDC has said, oh, it's okay for us to use bandanas, is a national outrage. It is not okay for us to use bandanas. We should not be on the front line around people coughing and sneezing in our faces, getting virus, shedding all around us, when we're there to help and take care of the thousands of people who are coming through our doors. So for people who have this urge to help, I would say call your senators, call Congress, and demand that the federal government puts through the Defense Production Act, that we put it into action, which is to mobilize American manufacturing for our critical shortage needs now, and commit to refuse to return back to work. So if everything is going great, to say, I will refuse to come back to work. We will be on general strike. We will keep this shit shut down until you show us that you care more about the American people than about the goddamn economy. And so for me, this is that point, that breaking point, and we need everyone to stand with us, because we are going in and we will be there to help you no matter what. And we will sacrifice our own lives doing it, but we should not have to, because we want to take care of everybody. And there are going to be millions of people who are sick. So yes, please, that is what I say. Don't make us homemade masks. Go on strike. And then, is that it?
That's it. Thank you, Rupa, for taking your time. I know you're super busy, and I just want you to know you're getting all kinds of love coming in, all messages, and we love you. We thank you.
Thank you.
We support you. We're with you. Thank
Yes,
you.
to our Indigenous friends around the world, I just want to say thank you deeply for your inspiration. I feel like what's happening right now is just going to wake up the world. We're all waking up, and thank you for your patience and love and generosity and constant way of showing us how to be. We are with you, and we're going to walk the whole world with you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Best wishes to you. Wow. So yeah, I mean, I think it's really important. Maybe we could put in the chat section, Defense Production Act, so people can look that up. Somebody just did great. So like, let's get on it, folks. We've got, a couple hundred people on this call. We've got people who are watching on Facebook, and we will be posting this. This is what we can do. People are sheltering in place. Let's use this time, not in the United States only, but around the world, to pressure governments to support the people in all of these ways that we've been speaking about. So there has been a question that has come up for you, Linda, around how to grow food inside. What if you are not land-based? And could you help us out with some tips on what could happen indoors? Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. Can I just say two things really quick? One, I want to reiterate what Rupa was saying, just because I still, people don't realize that our current administration does believe people of color are expendable. That may sound extreme to say, but I believe that as a scientist, I believe that we are expendable if it means the stock market stabilizes. We are expendable if it means that that Trump will not lose more money. And so don't believe for a second that they want to support laborers, that they want to support the poor. We are expendable, and they believe that they can replace us very easily. And so we have to stand up for ourselves and take care of ourselves and make sure that we are protected, because they're not going to do it for us. So I want to make sure that people know that. The other thing that I just want to make sure to ask people, I want you to constantly be aware that when you are taking these traditional medicines, when you are utilizing traditional medicines and traditional foods to boost your immune system and to get support, there have been Indigenous people for a very long time all over North, South, Central America, and in on other continents, who have, just as an example, in order to protect traditional medicines on Standing Rock, I was pepper sprayed 12 times. I was shot with rubber bullets. I was sprayed with water cannons in sub-zero temperatures to protect the plant nations here, to protect those traditional medicines, my allies, my friends, those medicines. And so when you are ordering your elderberries online, when you are ordering your licorice root online, someone has paid a price to protect those plants for you. And so anytime that you are ordering those, make sure that you are ordering them from someone who's reputable. Make sure that you are getting them from someone who has harvested them sustainably, because someone has paid a price to get that good medicine to you. So I wanted to say those two things, and now I can talk a little bit. Growing food inside is not just possible, it is actually very simple, and it's essential. You can do everything. You know those crazy pictures that you see on Facebook where people have taken the roots from their green onions and put them into glasses of water to regrow the green part of the scallions, the green onions that they get from the grocery store. Super simple to do, and it actually works. There was a long time when I took one bundle of green onions, scallions, cut the roots off, put them into a glass of water. After the roots formed a little bit, I moved them into a pot, and I was able to keep that one bunch of scallions going for over a year. I didn't have to buy scallions for over a year from one 99-cent bundle of scallions. You can do the same thing and root out almost any of your groceries, especially during this difficult time. Growing food in containers is very simple. Even if you do not have access to beautiful pots, you can use cardboard boxes that are lined with plastic. You can use even old baking dishes, you know, foil roasting pans and things like that. Be resourceful. I have a friend who grows every bit of the greenery that she eats in an old drawer from a dresser that she had. And she just filled it with dirt and lined the bottom with some gravel and added some potting soil. She did not go to the store to purchase potting soil. She actually found a pile of soil in a construction site. And she grows every bit of greenery she eats: kale, spinach, and different lettuces. And she even has some herbs growing in there like cilantro and parsley, almost for free. So it's very easy to do. And here's the thing. So let's say you plant some seeds and they don't grow the first time, or you make a couple mistakes. You just try again. Share seeds with your neighbors. I got some squash seeds from one of my neighbors just the other day. And so when you are growing those, you can grow tomato plants very easily inside. Eggplant is very easy to grow in pots and containers. But of course, those greens are super easy to grow, as are a lot of these medicinal plants that we've been talking about. So there are tons of videos, tons of resources. You can Google container gardening, and you'll get millions of hits. And so, you know, we're all of us are here to support and to help and to offer guidance in those things as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Linda. Those are great ideas. And also I wanted to acknowledge and thank you for, you know, all that you sacrificed and gave at Standing Rock, as you said, and, you know, how important it is to understand all the people who have put their lives on the line for us to have these seeds, to have this knowledge, and to thank you and so many Indigenous peoples who have been protecting this knowledge for so long. And now more than ever, you know, we need to come to you and to learn. And, you know, just to give a shout out to all that you said and to thank you. Thank you for being so strong and, you know, persistent, given just the absolute violence and rapaciousness of colonization. And, you know, if anything, we're seeing just such incredible resilience from our Indigenous sisters, and we deeply respect that and appreciate that. And I want to just do a quick shout out because today our Weekend Tongass Indigenous team is actually in Alaska right now, fighting, you know, one more time in another council meeting to protect the Tongass rainforest. And they just came into my mind right now, so I wanted to just remember some of the elders right now and the youth up there who are fighting so hard to protect their territories right now in the forests. And so many of our allies, you know, trying to shut down these fossil fuel companies, from, you know, Line 3 to up in Canada, fracking across the country. Our sisters and brothers who are you know, living in Cancer Alley right now, where you know, one thing, and Jackie, this comes back to you, and I kind of want to start wrapping up the call now so you can think about, you know, any final comments you want to make. But, you know, I've just been reading a really heavy study around how, again, Black and Brown Indigenous communities living in quote unquote sacrifice zones, where the lungs and the heart of, you know, so many of those folks who are living right next to oil refineries or, you know, different types of polluting factories, their lungs and hearts are already damaged, being forced to live in these communities. And so now with this COVID-19, they are more vulnerable because they are already living with that pollution. So, you know, these injustices are just getting more and more amplified. And, you know, I just can't stress enough how, you know, in addition to caring for our, you know, very immediate needs. I mean, I know many of us are in a place of like, how am I going to get my groceries and not get sick? And what am I washing? And, you know, where I just put my hands and quit touching my face. I mean, these are real things, like, how do I survive? How do I keep my community right around me surviving, and my family and friends? And there's very important need, because without our own health, we can't help anyone else. And then there's these bigger, systemic changes that we must collect together and really work in solidarity. And again, why we're sharing a lot of these links to these different activities, supporting international actions as well as national actions and global actions, so that we really have the changes that we need, because we cannot go back to where we came from. And I want to hand the floor to Jackie to see if she has any closing comments. And I'm just going to, someone asked me to say again the quote that I saw that came from the subways of China. And I'm going to find that quote for you so I can say it exactly again. It's right here because it just speaks so much to the moment. Again, this is the translation from Chinese. It says, "We can't return to normal because the normal that we had was precisely the problem." And I think that goes for our systems that we've been discussing, frontline peoples everywhere, our communities, and our Mother Earth. She's asking us to treat her differently. So with that, Jackie, please, if you have any closing comments or ideas, the floor is yours.
Thank you. No, I think that quote couldn't have said it better in terms of the deep flaws in our system that led this to be such a catastrophe for so many, and that we really need to rethink. Well, we've already been rethinking, the folks on this phone, but now we actually need to re-engineer our systems. And so I've been encouraged by some others who weren't necessarily thinking that way, kind of getting it a little bit more with this situation. And I hope that those lessons stick, and that we do have a broader movement to really examine the damages, the fundamental flaws in capitalism, and this call to reconnect with the earth in a meaningful way. So yeah, I think, yeah. So I was excited to see there were over 200 people on this call to have this conversation, and that encourages the potential for moving forward in this way. So thank you for your leadership, I want to say as well. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Jackie, and I so look forward to continuing to work together. And thank you for how hard you work. Jackie works 24/7 every day and has done, please check out the work that she's doing in her programs. We'll be sharing that in the link. Thank you for your hard work. And Linda, I wanted just to give you a chance to have any wrap-up comments you want before we close the call.
All I wanted to say is that, no matter what situation you're in, make sure that you're eating as well as possible, that you're avoiding refined sugar and refined flour, and avoiding dairy as much as possible, because those have been found to be inflammatory. Try to stay as healthy as possible. Make sure to keep your spirit up as much as possible so that your immune system stays high as well. And know that we are out here, Indigenous people are out here, but all of us are out here trying to do the right thing, trying to help out. I want to say thank you to my sister Jackie and my sister Rupa, and of course to you as well, for hosting this and standing in power. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time.
And thank you, Linda. And Linda, we will also put up the links for Linda's work that we really want to support. Incredible work, keeping her community healthy and sharing so many ideas in your leadership, Linda. Thank you. And as you know, Rupa had to leave. We're really thankful she could join us. I want to thank everyone who was on the call today. Let's take action together and stand in solidarity at this time. As some of the speakers said, we were all heading in this direction already, and now it's just been accelerated. So now's our opportunity. There has been this rupture in the way things have been, and now we have this opportunity to be with each other in Mother Earth and, hit the reset button, as they say. But, deeply from our spirit, from our heart, from our mind, using all of our capacities to really share who we are. And there's something we can all do. Remember that no matter what you're doing, it's a part of the solution. And, nothing is too small at this time. Everything counts at this time. And I also want to, give a big shout out of thanks to all, the people working in grocery stores, people working, making sure that people still get their medicines and in the mail. I mean, there's all these people working at the front lines in addition to the healthcare workers that I really want to send a prayer and love and protection for them, because they're out there in the public all the time, moving things about materially so that we can continue to live our lives. And a shout out to folks who don't have a home and are afraid for their families. Know that we are thinking of you, that we send you our love and compassion. This is a time when, we need to be very kind with each other. We need to understand people are under huge, intense pressures and everything is changing. The world has changed rapidly in the last month. And so it's a time to, really lift each other up and to share with each other as much as possible. I wanted to also let you know that there's been a lot of requests for us to continue these dialogues. So this is going to be the first of a whole series of conversations that the Women's Earth and Climate Action Network is going to be having. And for now, I don't know when we're exactly going to have our next conversation, but Catherine, if you could please put Women Speak in the chat section. Women Speak is an online storytelling database of solutions by and about women on all of these topics from all over the world. There are thousands and thousands of stories there. Oh, there's your young one. Thousands and thousands of stories about women in water, women in biodiversity, women and growing food, women in advocacy, women and the new economy. And that leadership has been building for decades. And now it's time for the rise of this powerful women and feminist movement that has been going on for a long time. So please go to Women Speak for resources and inspiration about things you can do. And, please sign up for our newsletter, and we'll let you know on our newsletter and on social media about this ongoing conversation, as this year unfolds. So with that, I send you so much love. Thank you to all the presenters, to our whole community. We love you, and we're standing in solidarity with you. Thank you. Maybe we could open up the line and just let everybody say goodbye and hear each other's voices.
Clarity.
Thank you.
Oh, Nana.
Love to everybody.
Thank you.
Nice to meet everybody.
Abrazos.
Love.